So, ladies and gents, I am super excited today to bring to you a friend of mine that I actually met online. We've actually never met in person, but we've met online back in 2010 through a mutual friend through social media. So, if anyone tells you you can't actually have real relationships on social media, they are completely wrong. My friend Justin Brackett currently is the head of content for Raging Bull. And prior to that, he was with Lakewood Church for a few years. Yep. And he is one of the people that I can say in a world of social media people who do it wrong, Justin really knows how to do it right. He knows how to build relationship. He knows how to cultivate relationship. And on the same side, he also understands the whole digital marketing aspect of things as well. So I am just super excited to bring to you Justin Brackett. Justin, welcome to us today. If you could just give us a little background on what brought you to where you are right now.
Yep, absolutely. But first, 2010 feels like 14 lives ago, or two 2020s, and so, but yeah, it's hard to believe that all this has been around for that long. So when you and I met, I had just started, or actually had just gone full-time working for myself and my first agency that I launched. And so I fell into digital marketing by accident. I had been working for Billy Graham, and they had gone through the 2000 economy collapse, and Franklin and Billy decided that they needed to shore up some of financial things. And so they reduced staff levels. And so I was actually in, believe it or not, hospitality management for them, helping run a conference center. And so they downsized and I was let go. I was unemployed for a year. A buddy of mine who ran the summer camp where my wife and I met decided that let's start a summer camp. And Justin, why don't you come and do marketing and sales for me? And I'm like, I don't have a clue what marketing is or sales. And he's like, it's cool. You've got the personality for it. We'll just find some people to coach you. It's a summer camp. Let's figure it out. Long story short, it was when they were first opening up Facebook. Prior to that, you'd had to have a .edu email address to get into it. You guys know all that, the history there. But within my first couple of months, I was able to connect with young mothers who were interested in sending their kids to camp. And so the following summer, we were able to tie a 200% increase in registrations directly to Facebook and Twitter. And that was just Tom and I tweeting and playing and like having random conversations, and it would just pull people into the conversation. And out of that, I launched my first company. So when you and I met, I had just launched Social Village. And so was helping nonprofits at that point really just understand what we called Web 2.0, embarrassingly enough now, but Web 2.0 and what do we do with it and how do you use it and what was it? And we were basically, I was helping people figure it out as I was figuring out. I usually was like 2 steps in front of them figuring it out. But it was a fun time because when Tom and you and I first met, it was very collaborative. It was very helpful. And we all, I don't know, we just kind of fell into a really cool tribe together. That was all very much I'll help you if you can help me. And if you can't, I don't care. And so anyways, launched my first business. A few years later, I sold that to an agency out of Vegas. Was with them for about a year and a half as we went through the merger and acquisition, and then they merged with a different company. And so out of that, they actually decided to lay off the digital side because it was these older guys that were just kind of like, we're into like funding new companies and insurance. The marketing side was just kind of this extra thing. We thought we could make money off of it. So I was laid off and, started yet another agency with my staff from the agency that I'd been bought out from. And, in scripture, it talks about not being unequally yoked. And oftentimes we as a church kind of put all that together in marriage. And I equate it. It is a strong point, or it is what we should think through it. But I learned the hard way that also has to do with business deals. And so there were 4 partners. One guy was not a believer, and long story short, did some scandalous stuff and sent my wife and I into bankruptcy because we had floated the startup of the company on equity loans and credit card payments. And so kids, be careful. And so we had a hard time. We were bankrupt, and I got right back into consulting just because of my background, and still most of all this was kind of in the nonprofit space, but mostly in the for-profit helping companies. And we started attending a new church in the mountains of North Carolina. My wife and I did, and it was one of those moments in church for us. We sat down, and like halfway through the service when the pastor was teaching, my wife and I both kind of looked at each other like, it's like he's been reading our text messages to each other. Like he knows what we need to hear today. And it was just, we fell in love with the church. I was still doing consulting. Long story short, the campus pastor took me to Charleston, South Carolina, where the headquarters was. And we met with the founding pastor, and he offered me a job on the spot. Said, our digital space is in chaos. You need a job right now. Why don't you just come on board with us? And so I was at Seacoast Church for 5 years with them, helping them go from 10 campuses to 14 campuses. And then 2 years ago, left there to come to Houston, where we were on staff with Pastor Joel Osteen and Lakewood Church for a little over 2 years.
Yep.
And then in the last month, transitioned to Raging Bull. And so that's the condensed version with a lot of the sleepless nights and what are we going to do left out of it.
So in your whole experience with this whole social media world, because like you said, you and I were kind of both there in the beginning. I think we both have Facebooks that started in around 2007, that type of thing. So it was pretty early on. And at that point, everybody was still treating it like a broadcast medium.
That's correct.
So what would you say some of the difference is between those that really get it and know what they're doing on social media and know what it's all about, and those that still kind of don't?
Yeah. I think you can look at account, and if you wanted to run any account, it could be, it could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, it could be Snapchat, it could be TikTok, it could be YouTube. And really what it is, if you want to know if they're doing it right, is when you look at the content, is the content making the person or the organization posting it the hero, or is the person reading it the hero? And if you read it and you're like, oh, they're just talking about themselves and they want to sell me more, they want to get me to their church, or they want to get me to volunteer, they've made the organization or the person the hero, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work well that way. And so that's one magnifying glass, or if you wanted to say, is it or is it not, you could hold that up, and every time it's an instantaneous thing of that person or that organization still doesn't understand that this is not just a broadcast. The other people who are really good at it, people who are really good at digital media, digital marketing, are the ones that can tell a story, which is a very cliche thing to say these days, but they can tell a story in a way that makes you the hero and you respond to the need that I have. And so those are the people that get it. Not a lot of people do. And the issue has become, so many people don't get it. We oftentimes go and look at other organizations, other churches, other bands, and because everyone is doing it that way, that has to be the right way of doing it, which is, it drives me nuts.
So you talk about storytelling. What to you is kind of like the keys to good storytelling that would make the audience the hero?
If we were to pick, let's just use churches for now, because it's a little bit easier, because I think we're all somewhat familiar with them and how they do it. So versus like using a story form of making an ask, because we still have to make the ask. We still need people to show up for church. We still need people to give, volunteer, all that type of stuff. So versus just saying, hey, we need 5 people in the nursery this weekend, click the button below to register. No one ever does that. But you could put it in the phrase of, hey, did you know we've got 14 4 and 5-year-olds who get to sit maybe one time a week and have someone tell them about how much Jesus loves them? And oh, by the way, did you know by spending an hour with a child during whatever your church calls it, nursery, kindergarten, whatever. But by spending an hour of quality time with that kid, you actually are going to spend more time and quality time with that kid than most of their parents are actually spending with them. We need help. Would you be a part of changing a kid's life? That story, like that's it. Versus, hey, we need help in the nursery, and everyone's kind of like, thanks, I'm out. But when we tell people like, hey, did you know you can be a part of changing a kid's life? And did you know that most parents in modern culture don't spend even an hour of quality time a day with their kids? But you have the opportunity as a Christ follower to love children in a way that just by spending an hour of quality time reading to them, coloring with them, you'll spend more quality time with them. So that's easy story, right? And so it's just not the, hey, give it to us, please, or we need this. It's help them understand. So that's a simple example.
Cool. So much of what you do is it's a relationship building and cultivating thing that there's not necessarily a quick and measurable, like, wow, I hit it out of the park kind of thing. But could you point to like maybe one or two situations in your career of doing social that you would say that, wow, you look at it and like, you're really proud of that. You got that right. And it's like, this was what happened. Do you have any type of case like that you could point to?
The way my brain's wired, I can tell you all the ones we didn't do it right. We'll get to those in a minute.
You and me both, brother.
It's just the way my brain goes. But anyways, one that we did right. So a year ago, we had the opportunity at Lakewood Church to host Kanye West, which is a big deal, like massive deal. And we had the ability to spin it in the whole thing of Kanye West is coming to our church, tune in and watch. And we chose not to, and you guys can go back and find all the postings. We've left them up for people to see, but we changed it, or we pivoted it in a moment of kind of brilliancy. And actually, one of our junior marketers came up with the whole idea. I was super proud of her for it. But it was one of those things with everyone is not sure what they think of Kanye yet, because he's still new in this faith movement. Like, is he trustable? We're honest, is he on his meds or not today? Like, that was some of the underlying conversations that were being had. And everyone's kind of like, well, why don't, and this, our junior marketer was kind of like, well, everyone trusts Pastor Joel. So why don't we frame up the whole thing with a conversation with Pastor Joel? It was brilliant because everyone showed up to hear, man, we trust that dude and we like him a lot and we respect him. So we'll show up and listen to what Pastor Joel asked him about. And so, that segment, which was about 35, 40 minutes long, Facebook told us was the fourth largest stream that they had on Facebook in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, did people show up just because it was Kanye? Sure. But I think people still showed up because at that point he was starting to do all the Sunday services all the time. It was not new. He was doing them every weekend at that point. But it was, we pitched it and we spent some ad dollars on it, but it was mostly the conversation with Pastor Joel.
Wow.
It made it very relational. So that was one that I'm super proud of that we did right. We did really, really good. And there's little ones that, I mean, there's little ones I sat here and thought about them long enough I would come up with, but that's the one I'm like, yep, we did that one good.
Well, you and I both know that the biggest successes are built off of the consistent little ones.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because that's relationship. So cool. So you've worked both in the for-profit world and also now with ministries as well, and now back to the for-profit world. What are some of the things, like what are the similarities you see in what you do and what's like very, very different?
And I think it's more, Tom, it's the heart behind it. And so one of the things that I challenged my team, so and a little bit more background on what I did at Lakewood and for Pastor Joel is I oversaw 3 teams. And so those 3 teams were the website content. So we had 9 websites and 2 mobile apps. And so I had a team that just kept content fresh. We didn't code anything. It was just content. I had an email and SMS team. So that was the guys and girls who were sending about 1.5 million to 2 million emails a day to his constituency. And then we had the social media team. And so, but every Tuesday I got them together and basically we would sit and talk about the one person. Like, who did you see? What post did you see this week? Or what response to an SMS? Or what response to, a social post or someone commenting? Because when we forget in churches and the larger the organization and the church becomes, we often start talking in huge numbers. Little churches do it too. They start quantifying or magnifying the numbers and we forget the one person. And so for my team, we'd go back and talk about, who did you hear from this week? What did it do to you? Because for me, the thing that I kept talking to people about is, I've switched from faith to profit markets now. So I'm seeing it play out. But what we do for faith-based organizations is, I mean, COVID has taught us a lot of stuff. But one of the things that COVID has taught us is we're way more lonely and way more isolated than we wanted to tell ourselves we were before, and way more hopeless. And COVID has caused us to be even more hopeless as a society, as a people group. So people are desperate for hope. And so I kept telling my team, man, guys and girls, we've been given hope that's Jesus, and we get to take it to millions of people a day. And if we don't get this right, no matter what your doctrinal thought process is, like, people's lives, they're ending them because they're hopeless. Marriages are falling apart because they don't have hope. And we have the ability to take hope straight into their pocket, their bedside. And so that's what we have to be focused on. How do we do better about open rates on emails and interactions on social posts and web traffic bounce rates? So for me, it's more of a heart issue, because in the for-profit space, what makes it way different is bottom line. It's all about bottom line, and I have a stand-up meeting now with the whole company at Raging Bull every morning that our COO runs. And we're talking 1 and 2 percentages that they will sit and talk for 15 minutes about, hey, we're off by 2% over yesterday. Our projections were this, we're down 2%, we're up 1%. And that's all it is. And I don't mind that at all, because, like, for me, I feel like, anyways, it's different. And it is, Jesus has called us all into different things. He's gifted us for different seasons. And for me, it's a season of, man, I'm not necessarily reaching millions like I was, or helping reach millions with Pastor Joel's message. But right now I'm reaching the 200 people around me. And for me, it's just as important. So how do I show up to meetings? How do I live my life out? How do I coach? How am I taking correction and living that out in that way? So that was a really long rabbit trail to get to your answer, in the sense of, it's more heart for me than anything. It's the difference in for-profit, nonprofit is really just kind of the heart behind it all.
Cool. It sounds to me too like there's this balance between, there's the whole the key performance indicator metrics side of things, because you don't just do social, but you've also done heavy stuff in the digital world as well. There's that side, and then there's the artistry and communication and relational side. So how does that all balance out with you? How do you, like, what's your mindset when you go to look at those types of things?
Research. I'm a numbers nerd. Like, I'm not a good, like, I can't do math. My wife can do math in her head, like, just, oh, it's that. And I'm like, how did you do that? And like that, I'm not that guy. Like, definitely not. But for me, it is a research in the sense of, I can, still learning it at Raging Bull, but for Lakewood, for Seacoast previously, I got to the point where I was so proficient with knowing what colors people responded to at specific times of the day. I knew that if we put a certain pastor on a certain stage, we would get a higher return or higher interaction. And so I'm a nerd for those type of details about the human interaction, about how do you respond and what is our target audience. So who is our target audience? Because if we don't know that, we're wasting everybody's time. I don't care how much money you have, or how cute or how cool or how beautiful your graphics are. If we don't know who our target audience is, we're basically just putting stuff up just because the church down the street does it, so we should too. So I'm a big proponent of who's our target, not only our target audience, but what do they respond to, knowing that. But then it is both nonprofit and for-profit. What are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? What are your organizational goals? Churches I've been a part of, they were never trying to tie social media to specific giving objectives, tithing, new building, community outreach, but they definitively were tying it to people in seats. And so that was the objective more times than not. And it was, being a part of Lakewood as we've gone through COVID, it was also digital attendance. How long are people staying involved and an online service. And when we get them there, then we shift over to the for-profit side. Right now, it's just being a part of a conversation. Like we've seen in my short time here, we've seen a micro increase in revenue just based on we're now back in the digital space because the company turned everything off for almost 2.5 years, and there was no interaction. And just while I'm getting up to speed and getting the team up to speed, we're interacting just a little bit, and so we're starting to see things come up on the bottom line already just by being present and being involved in a conversation.
So when for both Lakewood and for Raging Bull, do you develop like buyer personas or anything that you kind of have in mind you're crafting messages?
Absolutely. So personas are like, everybody has their own nomenclature. I call them avatars. And so yes, come up with avatars. Yeah. And so it's coming up with, it's Susie, who is, so it's Seacoast, was so they have 14 campuses. All but one are in the state of South Carolina. And so it was Susie. Susie was 35 to 40 years old, medium to upper medium income range, had 1.2 kids, probably drove a Escalade or a Suburban, and then down to that she shopped at these types of places. Why does that matter? Well, it matters a whole lot when we're trying to get an image in front of her. If it doesn't resonate with her, we're wasting our time. Raging Bull is, they don't even know what that is. They just are a huge, send a million emails and let's hope 1% gets open. And it's just a numbers game for them. I think I'm already coming on to it. And unfortunately, I think that their persona is going to unfortunately look a lot like myself. Early 40s, white, trying to make a little bit more money, hoping to retire before they are supposed to. So those type things. So, but yeah, absolutely. I call them avatars. If you don't have them, you're basically wasting your time. You're just putting stuff up to put stuff up. And the cool part is if it's done right, the thing that I loved about Pastor Joel is about a year into being on staff with him, we actually got him to start crafting the titles of his sermons based on the persona, because we knew who his persona was or who our avatar was, and we were trying to get in front of that avatar so we could start using words that they responded well to. Most of them were not very churchy words because he doesn't traditionally appeal to the more de-churched and unchurched community than anything. And so he was really known for using some overly churchy words. And as we kind of went a different direction, all his numbers skyrocketed just because it was hey, no, here's your audience. They don't use that word, buddy. They use more of these words. So, yep.
Yeah, and that's the balance I'm always talking about is that the keywords based on actual avatars or personas are so important for getting seen.
That's
but
correct.
Then it's got to be married with language, because an actual human being is going to be reading or hearing or listening or viewing whatever it is you've put out there as far as content goes.
Yeah. And I think Zoom's done that to us too, right? Because watch this.
There you go.
I mean, we built this persona that we want to, long story. It's psychology. My desk was over here for my last job, and I needed to move it. Just change my brain, change my perspective with a new job. But we set these personas up, and so if you and I did this well enough, and if I put up a green screen and my hands didn't keep disappearing, the idea would be that one day you could come to Houston, come up the stairs to the balcony, and come around the corner, and you'd be like, "Where's the white wall?" And so when we're digital, if we're not true to ourselves when in our marketing and in our messaging, we set this persona up, and they walk into our business and our church, and it's not the persona that we've shown them, we instantaneously lose credit. And so if we're talking in the church world, they walk in because you've put up the best angle every time, and you've put up the best music every time, and you put up the best graphic every time, and that's not 99% or 60% of your experience. And then you walk into your organization, your church, your company, whatever the case may be, and this happens, all of a sudden, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I want to be a part of what you're doing. And so there is this weird balance of, sorry, my granddad used to use it, calling it spit shining. Like you spit shine too much, you go too far. And then there's like Well, no one really wants to see that either, so there's that sweet spot in the marketing messaging and personas and what we put out, that you got to be real careful not to overdo what you think you are, because
Yep.
it'll backfire on you.
So like it may be putting your best foot forward, but it's still your foot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where you've dealt with a client or maybe even a potential client that you turned down, that their problem was they thought they wanted more marketing or to be able
Yeah.
to get out there, but their real problem was authenticity?
Absolutely. So yes, multiple times. So even with Raging Bull, I'm still taking on clients just because I don't sleep much, and so I just like to be busy, and so it's just one of those things that keeps everybody happy. If I'm not, like, whatever. So yes, but I tend to turn down clients based on, I have a questionnaire I send them, and I'll send it to you guys, Tom, if you want to give it to the class, just to be like
That'd
what
be
he
awesome.
puts people through. But it more or less is, I know by the time they answer number 2 whether or not I'm probably going to take them on as a client. Because if they can't tell me what their business goal is and what their 5-year plan is in bullet points, I don't want anything to do with them, just because they don't really know who they are as a company. And I'm not the guy that, there are some fantastic people out there that can get people to that, just not who Justin is. Okay. And so absolutely, I've turned people down. Unfortunately, I've turned mostly churches down when it comes to, they want to be like the church, whatever you want to put. I mean, there's hundreds of them that they want to be that church. And
But
you
they're not
walk
them.
in, and I mean, the pastor is still wearing a coat and tie. Pastor Joel does, so I have nothing against that. But they're mirroring everything from the guy that dressed more like me. And it's like, no, it's, your whole church leaves the moment we make this shift. And so, yep, it happens all the time.
Wow.
But again, they don't know who their avatar is. They just think that because the church down the road's got 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, it must be the right thing for us to do too.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And we've seen that so often in marketing, where it's just that whole Me Too thing, where they want the success from the other, but they have like no earthly clue who they are or who they're serving.
Yep.
So cool.
What is it that Gary Vaynerchuk says about overnight successes? It's something along the lines of like 5 to 7 years is an overnight success.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So it's just, and we all think that all of a sudden, because we trip over this account and find it that's got 100,000 followers. Although I will say TikTok has kind of thrown some of that on its head, but most of the traditional digital accounts, thousands of hours of work getting to being an overnight success. So.
Well, and TikTok was such a unique period of time, and they were piggybacking on so many other things that came before. So that was definitely set up for that type of success that way. But so you are a Christian. You went to Bryan College, right? I think. I thought I remember you went to Bryan College, and you're a Christian, and you have been in this marketplace of just generally marketing, where people are typically treated in the Christian world as the necessary evil. So how have you walked out your faith in the Christian marketplace? And actually in the, it seemed to me, I don't know if you've had the same situation. To me, it's actually, I've had an easier time walking out my faith in the secular marketplace than I have in the Christian marketplace. And judging from the smile on your face, you may have a similar story.
No question, Dash. I mean, in the church marketing space, there's lots of church marketing events that you can attend. Some of them are world class, some of them are not so world class. My last 2 years, it was always interesting going to those. And when people would ask me what church I was from, and I would tell them, I had people actually like turn around and walk away. So now I'm at this very secular, very Wall Street driven company. We have some fantastically strong believers within the company. Most are not. Most of them are not but when it has come up where I come from, I've watched people change their language. I've watched people, I don't like preachers, but I like yours, or like, I don't like church, but I might go to your church. And so absolutely, it's been something that I've experienced in the sense of we tend to be a little little bit harder on ourselves as Christians and churches than the people outside. So yeah, I've experienced it, and it's the way I've navigated is it's more about, as long as I know who my identity is, and if I know what you need from me, like what are our business goals and what are my responsibilities. If you guys have gotten into the Enneagram at all, I'm an Enneagram 8, which traditionally means that we're kind of rough and tumbling, and we tend to be the bull in the china shop. And I don't need you to like me. I'm just here to get work done. I'll turn it off. I need my 3 kids, my wife to like me. And it's really awesome when our dog shows up and she likes me. Other than that, I don't really care. And so I am wired a little bit for, I don't really care, because my faith is, although I love getting the opportunity to talk about faith with non-believers. So it's not that I shy away from that or avoid it or hide. It's just, I want to be the best marketer that Raging Bull has ever seen, because I know at the moment I'm the best, and I do above and beyond, or what I do, what I say I'm going to do, and I show up when I'm supposed to show up. It continues to open up doors. You're different. Why are you so different? In scripture, it talks about that we're to live our life in a way that people ask us about the hope that we have. I try to wake up each day and think about all the things that Jesus has given us, the blessings that we have in our life. And that's what instills and infuses hope. Because I want the people around me to show up and be like, man, you're awfully positive, or you get stuff done, and you can be kind of brash sometimes, but man, you're super positive, or you're hopeful, or because I want people to ask. Because anyway, that's the way I choose to do my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Justin, I always end every interview like this. If you were to have to start all over again, what do you wish you'd know now that you, or what do you wish you knew then when you first started out that you know now?
That I didn't try to do it alone. While you and I talked about early on in 2010, it was this like, hey, this is a fun tribe. I might ask you this. I felt very much that it was, hey, you got to figure it out yourself, dude. You can't be charging people money that Tom gave you advice that now you're turning around. I'm not a proponent of that. I just think as a society, we're way more helpful than we think we are. And so it's also just ask. Be a better question asker. So I think if there were 2 things, if I could go back to 2010, I think there'd be 2 things that I would say if I could go back in time and say something to myself. It would be ask better questions. Ask better questions. Just because there's so much in it. And so anyways, there's a gentleman named Bob Bill, and he has this little tiny little pocket book that's the book of questions.
He's a leadership guy.
Absolutely,
awesome.
He is. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he is.
It's the book of questions. And so become a collector of questions. And so I have, this one's not all questions, but and it's just thoughts. Hey, I want to think about this, anyway, so just ask better questions. All the other stuff, marketing, like picking up marketing, what can you do better? Where can you go? For me, hey, could I watch you do that? Or, hey, could I pitch you? Hey, could I hire you? Hey, I think I can do better for yourself. And it's just the questions, and there's probably a little bit of self-confidence in that as well, but it's just be a collector of questions and ask good questions.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Justin, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Love to do it.
We're rooting for you in your new gig with Raging Bull, and I will continue to watch and read what's going on there.
That would be great. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a great time.